Hey, it's Joe, and welcome to another episode of the Test Guild Performance and Site Reliability Podcast. And today, you're in for a special treat because it's kind of be a little twisted if you've been listening for a long time, and you'll find out why. We have Eran joining us, Eran Kinsbruner, to talk all about how to understand the behavior of live applications. Eran is now the global head of product marketing at Lightrun and a best-selling author. He also, if you don't know about Lightrun, it's a new tool I just learned more about myself. Lightrun provides a developer, native observability platforms directly into their IDEs to help them troubleshoot, distribute, and do remote workloads for cloud native, Kubernetes, serverless, progressive delivery, etc. It's a really cool technology. If you're a tester, I think you really need to tune into this as well to learn about where the industry is going. And Eran's going to be leading the way, so you don't want to miss this episode. Check it out. Hey, Eran, welcome back to the Guild.
Hey, Joe. Happy to be here with you again, and thank you for the nice intro.
Absolutely. Great to have you. So people listening, like I said, might be like, what? Because you've worked for another company for a long amount of time. You've been in the automation testing industry for years, and you've written a lot of books in this space as well. So just curious to know what happened. Do you have a new position? What's this about? Just to get people back up to speed of where you are right now.
Definitely. So yeah, I've been over a decade with Perfecto and Blazemeter under Perforce, and did a lot about software quality. And software quality is a challenge, and we were always talking about shift left. So I like a lot about the shift left, the things that developers are more accountable and owning everything about software quality, software performance, software observability. Because when you look at DevOps, even though everyone is talking about DevOps, Dev and Ops are still in different silos. So developers would deliver their code, would it be in a serverless deployment, Kubernetes, containerized application deployments, and they would forget about it. Well, maybe not forget about it, but they would definitely be challenged to get access and insights into their code after it was kind of pushed into the production environment. And when you're getting tickets flying, issues coming from production, from your customers, so yeah, it's involving quality. But how you troubleshoot and meet all these SLAs and MTTRs that you are trying to reduce, how do you prevent these things from recurring in the future? So these kind of things were really exciting to me. I didn't really touch them too much in my mind while I was doing pure software quality software test automation. And when I heard and was approached by Lightrun, I was amazed because, they're solving something. Whenever I'm talking with many gurus in the industry, they say, okay, if we're only able to do this live troubleshooting in production a decade ago, few years ago, we would have been saving not just money, but so much time and pain for our customers. So I think that, this was kind of a nice transition for me, moving from software quality to ensuring quality, but from the hands of the developers, from the native environments, which are the IDEs. So I was really excited to join Lightrun, and I hope to see how they really penetrate into this entire CI/CD, entire DevOps cycle, and kind of change the rule of games so troubleshooting isn't so painful as it used to be.
Awesome. So you did mention shift left. So is observability in this type of technology shift right, or is it shift right? You get that information, which helps you then shift left earlier. Does that make sense?
It does, and that's a great question, because when you say shift left or shift right, these are two things which are sometimes separated, right? Shift right, here people think about APM tools, Logs.io, Grafana, all these dashboards, which are very useful, very strong, but they give you insights from production. And who is the owner of production insights? The ops guys, the SREs, and these kind of things, these kind of personas. But when they get these logs and dashboards and stuff, okay, they don't always have the tools. They're not the developers who wrote this service that is running in this remote pod, in this remote cluster, etc. So there is kind of a gap between this shift right and shift left, because these guys are able, the guys from the shift right world are able to get up until a certain level of observability. But when you're trying to troubleshoot in a really fast MTTR cycle, you're not always getting the right tools and process in place to do this smooth transition. Even more, when you are dealing with remote clusters and pods and this kind of production running environments, you as a developer, you are unable to even access these remote environments. And these remote environments are very limited by tools. Sometimes they don't even have a shell. Okay, so to even open, command prompts and run, these kubectl and other tools that you want as part of your troubleshooting activities. So it's a nice way or nice requirement to have this shift right and shift left connecting, getting insights from production, shifting them left, shift observability left to the developers, to the IDE. But in reality, it's very hard. Limitations of tools, security. You need to stop the running application in production because you want to put telemetry and breakpoints. You want to learn more because sometimes the logs that you have aren't good enough. So it is all the content for a different book, if you like. But it's a very challenging deployment in which we are living right now with the microservices and the cloud native applications. So that's where things need to change.
Absolutely. So you talked about personas. So a lot of the copy I see on Lightrun's website and some things you've written seem to be developer centric. So does a tester fit in this at all? Would a tester find any value from this type of information, or are they more of just being aware to know, hey, developer, you have to check this out? Like where does a tester fit in this type of where you find yourself, this type of role now?
That's another great question, Joe. So, troubleshooting and resolving issues is done by developers, right? But when developer is able to pinpoint the issue, get the full cycle observability into his IDE and be able to fix the issues as fast as possible, it does need to trigger a CI/CD loop where it's also running some test cases, right? In this automation cycle, what Lightrun can actually do is actually also able to troubleshoot CI/CD pipeline failures in test cases, understanding the false positive and negatives that you have within your CI pipeline. Because at the end of the day, you can add conditions, you can add telemetry into your test code as well, and understand if the build upon the troubleshooting cycle is good to go or not. So definitely testers maybe later in the cycle can benefit from the CI/CD workflow. And by the way, Joe, we know together that within a DevOps family, yes, there are persona titles, but we're dealing with a squad or with a feature team which owns both development and quality. So yes, the QA or the automation guys will be running the test cases or writing the test cases, but they will tag along with the developers and will need to be in sync as developers are putting the fixes once they finish all this troubleshooting cycle, which hopefully is faster done with Lightrun.
Nice. So I kind of want to build some context of maybe how people can start visualizing this. So I know that for me, what I saw, you recently posted something on troubleshooting Java applications using dynamic instrumentation. I assume it's one of the first things you've published in this new role. And I think you set the stage by breaking down why there's a new need here, like modern application. You touched on microservices, Kubernetes, all these things have created new challenges. So where do we stand with standing the like testing then from where people may be thinking how they used to do troubleshooting, maybe even troubleshooting Java applications compared to now, but maybe some things that need to change or some mindsets that may need to be shifted to address the modern needs we need for this type of tech?
So it's I would say the world is evolving into a much more, because it wasn't that complex prior, now it's even more. So you mentioned earlier serverless, right? The Lambda actions. These kind of environments, even to set them up for troubleshooting and testing and everything, it's quite challenging, okay? Think about these serverless applications are event-driven programming solutions, which means when a service is calling something, an instance is being set up for him, and sometimes these actions takes matter of microseconds or 5 seconds up until few minutes. So in such a very quick back and forth service communication between Lambda actions and other kind of Google actions as well, Azure, all these cloud native applications, which are either cloud native standard applications or serverless, that both the developers and the testers and the SREs and the DevOps engineers are now challenged in gaining visibility to this environment, because setting it up locally is, I would say, it's complex than ever before. Okay, and this is what I'm hearing from customers of Lightrun. They used to do what they call remote debugging up until now, and that's a traditional workflow that you're doing from your IDE, IntelliJ, PyCharm, VS Code, which is fine. But to do so, you need some kind of a remote debugging to an environment, but this environment is very far away. You have hundreds of pods that are running these replicas of your service. How do you find the right pod? And you need port forwarding, and you need to, once you're putting a breakpoint from the IDE to this remote environment, you need to stop the running application. So it changes the state. So it might not be the production app, it will be a pre-production, but you still are stopping the running application. And by the way, when you're doing so, you're trying to add more telemetry. Add more telemetry, it means you need to add more code. To add more code, it's a full redeployment. Okay, so this new way of DevOps with cloud native application software development lifecycle is becoming way more complex than before, which requires a mix of different processes and tools to allow you to expedite, as we say, the MTTR and also the MTBF. When you talk about SREs and everything, so they say, okay, we got some fire drill from production, MTTR, right? We have SLAs, we need to fix it fast. But how do you prevent it from coming back again? And that's the mean time between failures. How do you extend the time so this thing doesn't come back? Going back to your question about testers, right? So once you get this full observability, the full visibility into issues, into the root cause, by not stopping applications that are still running, getting exactly the user flow visibility into your IDE, you learn a lot about what's happening in your real world, and you can feed this information back to your testing teams, and this reflects on the entire continuous improvement of everything around your software delivery lifecycle.
Nice. So maybe I'm off base here, but back in the day, you used to have a server in-house. You knew what was going on. You knew the server database, and probably that was like as complicated as it got. Now you mentioned cloud native. You have these services, third-party things being consumed. Yep. Is that what makes this also difficult? Is you may not even know like where to even debug or put logs, because it's dealing with things that it's so dynamic that you don't even know nowadays almost.
That's exactly the thing. And when you're dealing with serverless, you definitely don't know. You have zero visibility. So yes, developers in this kind of new world are detached from their applications. After they deployed or did a pull request, they put the code in, they don't know where and how it's going to run in production. And if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you would see connecting developers to their live applications. Okay, we're trying to bridge this gap so they do have this easier bridge to their applications to troubleshoot issues without the dependencies of a long full recycle or redeployment that involves the DevOps engineers and the QA and everyone else. So developers are getting the full power that they need to prevent or to troubleshoot and mitigate issues. And issues can be performance issues, it can be functionality, it can be security as well. Because, Joe, I think that you are familiar with the Log4j crisis that came, and quite recently there was another Python issue or incident. And these issues, everyone was kind of impacted. But how do you know that in your code workflow, when you are running it in the runtime environment, actually passes and uses this security vulnerability? Only by examining and getting observability. And you might understand, yes, I'm using Log4j for my logging and everything, but my code in runtime never even goes to this code flow. So I would never be impacted by this security. So this security prioritization, because today with SAST and DAST and all these security things, you're getting a lot of false positives. You're getting tons of noise. and developers, how they prioritize what to fix and what is really impacting our end or their end users. So this is another pain that we are seeing today involving observability.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think you mentioned so far the old way of doing things. There's main reasons that causes like developer productivity is
Yes.
one thing that's costly. Cost of logging, obviously, and you mentioned MTTR. So what's the alternative approach then? What is dynamic instrumentation and logging?
So dynamic instrumentation, dynamic logging actually allows the developers to log only when and where they need. So instead of just throwing logs at almost any line for a just in case situation, maybe something will fail, so I have a log for that, and this piles up into a very huge cloud bill. And today, the FinOps Foundation, that's a movement that is growing. It's an open source. It's a foundation that drives cost awareness and optimization, and it's trying to shift left accountability to developers, because developers not always care about the bills that they are going to get from their cloud providers. So they put as many logs as they think they need, but not always, maybe sometimes never, they are using this kind of logs. What they actually are doing when something is happening, they're finding out that these logs aren't good enough, and they're just trying to add more logs. So with dynamic instrumentation and dynamic logging, these developers can observe, add logs in runtime, as I demonstrated in my recent post, right? They can add specific logs, metrics, virtual breakpoints. Virtual breakpoints are like a breakpoint that you would do traditionally from your IDE, but the big difference, the main one, is that they are not stopping the application. That's why they are called snapshots. You are taking a snapshot of a running application and you are observing through the entire variable path what's happening in this specific method. You are taking the code block of a specific application, whether it's Java, Node.js, Python, whatever, and you are measuring how much time it took to exercise this method. But this method is still running in production. You're not stopping, you're not redeploying to add more logs. So the main difference between dynamic logging and traditional logging, for traditional logging, you need more telemetry. That's fine. You add more logs, you open a ticket to Datadog and the other logging vendors, and you redeploy the code to all these clusters so you can observe. So that's a very tedious, costly, and inefficient way of troubleshooting, in opposed to the dynamic thing, again, on-demand debugging.
So you're just injecting things at runtime, so you didn't have to like recompile code or anything. You're just going in. You don't have to flip any crazy switches in your code. It's just
nothing.
You're injecting almost.
And the beauty of that, you inject them directly from your IDE into live remote productions without changing the state and stopping the application.
Wow.
We have a full IP and technology around that, but to your point, that's exactly that.
Very, very cool. Yeah. So I guess, like, how do people get started with this? If people, like, we mentioned Lightrun multiple times. This is not a promo for Lightrun, but you happen to work for Lightrun. Just curious, talk a little bit about how Lightrun helps with this. Then you mentioned you have some unique technology that helps do this.
So Lightrun comes as a free, so we have a free tier. You can start for free and get, so Lightrun basically is a platform which includes 3 components. The first one is the SDK plugin. You download the SDK plugin, whether you're using IntelliJ, VS Code, vscode.dev, the online web-based IDE, PyCharm, Rider for .NET, and others. So basically, the entire IntelliJ JetBrains IDE family is supported. So whether language you're using, you would use this IDE. You will download the plugin. It's free. You get the plugin to your IDE. You authenticate from the plugin. Your user can be your Gmail or your business account. It's your choice. Once you authenticate, the SDK is now communicating with the management SaaS cloud-based portal of Lightrun. And that is the bridge to your live applications. So basically, once you're doing that, you just need the agent. The agent is the one that is doing the dynamic instrumentation of your target applications. Okay, so once you're running the application with our agent, call it an SDK. Okay, we call it agent, it's an SDK. Once you're running the application, Node.js, Kubernetes deployed applications, containerized application, whatever, you're running it along with the application. It sits and polls the management server. The management servers listens to developers' requests coming from the IDE. Okay, so let's say you are using Java, you're using IntelliJ, you have the exact snapshot of your application, the Java application that is in production. Okay, you want to put a breakpoint, a virtual breakpoint. You want to put some logs into the running application in production. You will use the Lightrun plugin from the IDE. Say, I want a snapshot of this line 4 times. I want 4 snapshots. I want these logs from this line 100 in the running application. The management server that listens to the SDK, to the IDE plugin, will ask the agent, please get me this information, and it's going one way only. Okay, so fully secured, PII, everything included, goes back through this secure channel to the developer's IDE. So there is a checksum in the IDE version of your code and what's running in production. So you're not really touching and changing states in production. The application is running in production. You're getting insight directly to your IDE. And you can start free.
Very nice. So does this do any sort of remediation, or is it just it's just log files and then it's up to the developer then to say, I have all these logs now. I mean, what does this mean? Or how do I know this is bad or good? What does that do?
So the developer knows his code. So the only thing that it allows him to do is suspect that, the exception or whatever is happening in this area, in this method, that's the thing that he needs to observe. He doesn't have enough logs from the logs that were deployed originally to production. Okay, so he's going to poll the application and get insights. And the insights are like any debugger. You get the full variable path, you get the full insights, the full conditional logging. You can put conditions. You only want logs from this production user ID or from this code path back to your ID. So the developer can really pinpoint, what he's looking for based on the output that he's getting into the log console that comes in the SDK, and snapshots and performance metrics as well. We get performance metrics. He can then make some sense out of what he's getting and remediate, fix, maybe do another round of troubleshooting. But this round of troubleshooting is very, very fast. Okay, these logs do not live forever. They are like kind of immediate. You put the log, you use it, it goes away automatically. If you don't touch it, it goes away in an hour. You can delete it yourself, or if you need to save it for audit trails or whatever, you can keep it for more time. But this is kind of a new agile way of troubleshooting production environments directly from the IDE without this full redeployment tedious cycle.
And I assume this technology would allow you to see things that you couldn't see, because this is, you're looking at production where you may be using services and containers that you're not even aware of, but you couldn't even reproduce locally. So it seems like you may not have anticipated an issue. Now it's in the wild, and you can easily, rather than trying to figure out, keep rebuilding the application and redeploying it, it's just dynamically just inserting it and getting the information that you need.
So I mentioned earlier the prioritization of security issues. You would only know based on runtime. I can give you another example. A lot of our customers are using today what we call progressive delivery, feature flagging. That's another thing, right? You would know on a segment of users, remotely distributed, whatever, that they are using a version of your code, a version of your application. You would know exactly how to troubleshoot a specific issue that was only deployed to them. Okay, so that's another use case that you can only do and troubleshoot locally when you have this kind of observability. Otherwise, it's going to be probably a nightmare for you to troubleshoot.
You also mentioned, this is also a performance podcast. Yeah. You mentioned something about performance, but you didn't go into detail. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more maybe about performance metrics analysis that you get using this approach?
Of course. So what we have logs, we have snapshots. These are good for troubleshooting, but sometimes, and we're dealing mostly with backend issues, okay, less of the front end performance coverage, but you would see on a web service, on a web application, Node.js or whatever, that actually we had a pet online store, that one of the services took way too long. Okay, so yes, you have different ways of troubleshooting performance, but we looked at how files and stuff like that, and we're able to find the area in the code that kind of is responsible for this service. So with Lightrun, we just gather this method or code block and ran some metrics. We can gather metrics of how much time it took to exercise the method, how much time it took to do a specific service call around this method, and back again to the IDE. So if you're using Prometheus, you're using Grafana and other dashboards to visualize performance, so you're actually going to get a synchronized output of metrics, performance indicators from Lightrun on a specific method coming on top of what you already have and consume. But this is going to come directly from production. And think about one customer website, other customer website, production, pre-production, benchmarking. So this can really give you a wide range of performance visibility through gathering different metrics. Okay, we call it TikTok, by the way. We actually use a clock and we measure the performance there.
All right. So I used to work for a healthcare company that had certain hospitals that had certain infrastructure. Yeah. And you find issues, you're like, we don't know, we've never seen this, that they're using something totally different. So could you run this on a client instance and get this information as well? Yeah. So you like all these weird environment issues that are different between hospital to hospital could be bubbled up using this also?
As long as you have internet connection, that's what you need. You can use Lightrun anywhere. That's the communication from the production or from the other service back to the management server that I mentioned earlier, back to the IDE. So any environment, complex as it will be, you can use Lightrun to troubleshoot and analyze these kind of issues. And again, we are talking a lot about full observability cycle, and we are working with companies like Dynatrace and Grafana and Instana and all these Logs.io. All these vendors are working with us on a better together kind of story, because you are not ditching your traditional dashboards and APM tools. You're just getting another X-ray, another set of eyes for complex issues, for complex investigation, especially in production, in environments that you can simply never, as a single developer, replicate locally in your IDE.
Wow, it sounds incredible. Now, you said that you actually have to see this to believe it. So you do have a free version. This is normally an audio-only podcast, but I didn't know if you had like a quick demo you can show, and I could do it in the YouTube version, or we could hold that off till maybe just a different show or something. It's up to you.
I can quickly show something, right. And if anyone was skeptical about everything that I've just said, right. Let's try and see something live. And cool. I'll just move and share my screen. Okay, so what you see right now, you see in my browser that I am authenticated. That's kind of the authentication sign coming from the IDE, from IntelliJ. Once I'm authenticated, you would see that also in my management server, you see it here, that I have no running agents, okay? Which means I'm currently, as a developer, I'm disconnected from my production environment. But let's look at these two windows, okay? We have here two remote VMs. One of them is running in Amazon, in AWS. The other one is running on Oracle. I'm going to connect to these remote distributed environments, and I'm going to run a simple Java project. And what you see right now, that's the dynamic instrumentation. I'm running the projects with an agent path. That's the SDK that will poll for requests coming from the IDE. At the same time, I'm going to run the same application. So think about replicas and different environments. So the same application, which is just looking for article titles coming from Wikipedia. Okay, you see it here. It takes every 30 seconds or so, it takes an article based on a pattern from Wikipedia. But again, it's the same code running on a remote AWS environment and on a remote Oracle. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my IntelliJ, okay? And you see here that I'm connected. I'm going to add a log that I want to poll these book titles, and I'm going to pipe this information both to the std out and to the plugin of Lightrun. And I'm going to direct my log request right now to AWS prod, okay? And you will see that I'm doing it right now. And I'm going to do the exact same thing to the Oracle VM. So I tagged both the remote VMs. I'm going to get logs from both these environments. You can see here that both environments are running. And you see right now, okay, I'm just, so you believe me, the application is still running, okay? You see it here, okay? I'm piping the logs to the production. You see here the book title, okay, from Wikipedia is being thrown to the std out, but it's also being thrown to my Lightrun console in the IDE. So the developer doesn't need to know or care where the application is running. It can be in 20,000 pods or thousands of pods, but is actually looking here into the terminal. Okay. If I want to add some metrics, we talked about performance, so I can actually look at all these lines, and this is a very important method in my Java application. So I can actually take some metrics, and I'm going to measure, on the Oracle instance, okay, I'll call it performance metrics, okay, and I'm only going to pipe the outputs to my plugin. So right now you will see kind of a blue clock that ticks, and it measures, you will see it here, you see TikTok, okay? So right now I'm actually calculating the time it takes to execute this specific method that simply goes and pulls or fetches from Wikipedia the book titles, okay? So that's amazing. The application is running in a remote environment. I'm able to take logs. I'm able to measure performance time for a specific method. And by the way, if I want to take also a snapshot, so I can actually debug, I can actually take a snapshot here, and here I'm going to, I'm not going to use expression, just say Joe Colantonio. No, I cannot write this here. Next time, Joe, I'll give you the shout out. But I'm going to take a snapshot, and you will soon see an image. You see snapshot was taken. Okay. Once I click on that, I go to the Lightrun snapshot, and you see that an active snapshot from the Oracle remote machine was taken exactly at the same time, and I can go here to the title and to the entire path and observe and see what book or what article was being taken at the same time. You get the point. Dynamic observability, shifting left back to the developers from the most complex environments, giving you troubleshooting capabilities from performance standpoint, logging, and all, without really stopping or redeploying your code to the production sensitive environments. And one last thing, Joe, and with that I will finish. If you go back to this terminal and you reload the management portal, you will actually see that right now the agents are live. There is one Java agent running on Oracle, and the other one is on AWS. And if I want to see what actions I took, you can see here that I was using random the Wikipedia Java application from the plugin to do both logging captures, TikTok metrics, and just dynamic logging from the running application. So I think that kind of summarized this short demo that I wanted to show you.
Very awesome. I can see why you were excited when you learned about this company. That's very cool. So, Eran, I like to keep this about 30 minutes. So I guess before we go, is there one piece of actual advice you can give to someone to help them with their observability efforts? And what's the best way to find, contact you, or learn more about this new approach to logging, I guess?
So I would say it's a complex advice. As we started talking today, the marketplace is evolving towards much more complex applications. Microservices, cloud native, serverless aren't new, but the adoption of these types of applications is growing. And with this growth comes the challenges of troubleshooting, MTTR, keeping your customers happy, but also keeping your developers happy, because if developers spend too much time troubleshooting their applications and they don't have the right tools, they aren't happy, they are not productive, and we know how it goes. So what I recommend or give as an advice, and I think that's where, and I see other vendors looking into the same approach as we speak, is to think about redefining or reviving the entire process of the SDLC within DevOps and considering new approaches of troubleshooting when it's needed. Okay, I'm not saying APM logs should be ditched. They are very useful. They are very important. Performance tools are very important, but there are use cases where only this kind of approach will help you be productive. So see how you fit it into your entire existing processes and get your developers more, I would say, accountable for this quality, but also accountable for the cost of cloud computing, which is also rising. We are in a very difficult year, I would say, from an economy perspective. So cutting logging costs, cutting cloud computing, looking at what FinOps are pitching is very important for the future of this cloud native application development. And to your other question, learning more about Lightrun, lightrun.com, of course. We have a blog, we have social media, we have monthly webinars where we are inviting many industry experts to talk about how they are adopting dynamic instrumentation, dynamic logging, FinOps, shifting their FinOps awareness back to the developers and these kind of things. So either follow me or follow Lightrun and you will be in the know.
Thanks again for your performance testing awesomeness. For links to everything of value we covered in this episode, head on over to testguild.com/P109. And while you're there, make sure to click on the Try Them Both Today link under the exclusive sponsors section to learn all about SmartBear's two awesome performance test tool solutions, Load Ninja and Load UI Pro. And if the show has helped you in any way, why not rate and review it in iTunes? Reviews really do matter in the rankings of the show, and I read each and every one of them. So that's it for this episode of the Test Guild Performance and Site Reliability Podcast. I'm Joe. My mission is to help you succeed with creating end-to-end, full-stack performance testing awesomeness. As always, test everything and keep the good. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Test Guild Performance and Site Reliability Podcast. Head on over to testguild.com for full show notes, amazing blog articles, and online testing conferences. Don't forget to subscribe to the Guild to continue your testing journey.